That right there is our place in the heavens. That is what it looks like from the outside looking in. The Urantia book tells us that the rest of the universe calls this planet Urantia, from the ancient Greek word urani, meaning heavenly or of heaven. Urania was, in Greek mythology, the muse of astronomy, and the Greek historian Diodorus wrote of her in about 50 AD these words: "Those who are most concerned with philosophy and the heavens are dearest to her. Those who have been instructed by her she raises aloft to the heavens. For it is a fact that imagination and the power of thought lift men's souls to the heavenly heights." Urantia is a cosmological name for our planet Earth. Etymologically defined, it means our place in the heavens. That is my home, and it is your home. This is where we live. This is the place where your parents lived, loved, worked, toiled, as did mine, and our grandparents, and our great-grandparents. In fact, everybody we ever knew or knew of, as far back as we can remember or as far back as we can discover, lived here on this little planet. You ever wonder about them? The people you came from? Because there's a lot of them. There is a lot of them in you. You are the apex of a huge, gigantic, genetic pyramid of over 1 million years in the making. You had two parents, and they had two parents, who had two parents, who had two parents, etc., etc. Over 50,000 people would have contributed to your DNA. 25,000 pairs came together to make what is the blueprint for you. And they all started right here, on our little blue dot in the vastness of space. Can you imagine if we could bring all of those people together in just one place? You would need one of the largest football stadiums in the world to do so. And if you could stand in the center of the field, everywhere you looked would be your family. Everybody in that stadium would be a parent or a grandparent and related to you. And they would all be pointing at you and saying, "Look at what we have done. Look at what we have contributed to the building of the family of man." And their next question would be for you. What is going to be your contribution to the well-being and the flourishing of humanity? Because if this illustrates one thing, it is this. Here we see
that we are all just a small part of a much bigger whole. In paper 12 of the Urantia book, we read these words: "The part profits or suffers in measure with the whole. The good effort of each person benefits all of us. The error of each person augments the tribulation of all people. As moves the part, so moves the whole. As the progress of the whole, so the progress of the part. The growth of the part and the whole together determine whether the part is held back by the inertia of the whole or is carried forward by the momentum of the cosmic relationship of us all." Today, we live in a cosmological age. We have aimed our telescopes up into the heavens and have seen the enormity of our universe. And we are staggered, astonished, enthralled, and a bit bewildered. We know that we can't see it all, and we wonder, like humans have for a million years, what's out there? How did this all come about? What is the purpose behind all of this? All of these queries, these imperatives, this transformation that is taking place in our world, all support the sense of urgency and the sense of confidence that we bring to our mission here for this series: to awaken others to our relationship with the cosmos. This, the 400th anniversary of Galileo's first look through the telescope. Truly one of the greats in this arena is Dr. Carl Sagan. In this, the 4th century of the scientific revolution, our understanding of nature and the universe is expanding in all directions. The social, cultural, spiritual implications of this upheaval are incalculable. And one of the greats in this field of astrophysics was Dr. Carl Sagan. His scientific curiosity led him to earn 4 degrees in physics, astronomy, astrophysics, all from the University of Chicago in 1960. He taught and conducted research at Harvard University, where he was one of the first to determine that life could have existed elsewhere in the universe. In 1968, he became a professor at Cornell University, where he also was the director of the Laboratory for Planetary Studies. He was well known as a pioneer in the field of exobiology, which is the study of the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And he constantly worked with and appealed to NASA to extend its explorations into the universe. In his role as visiting scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, Dr. Sagan helped design and manage the Mariner 2 mission to Venus, the Mariner 9 and Viking trips to Mars, the Voyager mission to the outer solar system, and the Galileo mission to Jupiter. He's one of the best-known scientists of the late 20th century, serving as our guide to the planets during the golden age of the solar system exploration. He was both a visionary and a committed defender of rational scientific thinking. Here's what he had to say about our planet Earth. Let's have a listen.
That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Thank you, Dr. Sagan. Dr. Sagan's interest in popular misconceptions about science led him to speaking and teaching engagements in many conferences, university engagements, and to organize 2 particular public symposiums at meetings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science on the topic of extraterrestrial life. Now, he applied a scientific standard that is often associated with his name, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary levels of evidence or proof. But he preferred the positive approach, talking about what was correct rather than exposing errors in others. While vigorously advocating the concepts of scientific skepticism, Sagan also raised the questions about strategy. He wrote that the chief difficulty I see in the skeptical movement is its polarization, us versus them. The sense that we, skeptics, have a monopoly on the truth, and that those other people who believe in all these silly doctrines are nothing but a bunch of morons. He was especially troubled by anti-religious attitudes within the scientific community. While not a declared believer himself, Sagan had constructive interactions with many religious leaders, including the Pope and the Dalai Lama. He advocated this idea: there is no necessary conflict between science and religion. On one level, they share similar and consonant goals, and each needs the other. Plainly, science is a tool for exploring the physical universe. We had better make the best of it. When we finally come to terms with it and fully recognize its beauty and its power, we will find, in a spiritual sense as well as in practical matters, that we have made a bargain strongly in our favor. This is where it gets interesting. One of those conferences that Dr. Sagan organized in 1971 was entitled Communications with Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which asked the question, what does it mean for a civilization to be 1,000,000 years old? he added, "we have had radio telescopes and spaceships for only a few decades. Our technical civilization is just a few hundred years old. An advanced civilization millions of years old is as much beyond us as we are beyond the bush baby or the baboon. How do we speak to a civilization that is millions of years old?" The Urantia book asked a similar question. How does a civilization that is millions and millions of years old speak to us? Okay, here we go. This is where this gets real interesting. The keynote speaker at this conference was the acclaimed British molecular biologist, biophysicist, neuroscientist, and Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Francis Crick, most noted for being the co-discoverer of the structure of the DNA molecule in 1953, along with Dr. James Watson. At this conference of some of the most important scientists in the field of astrophysics and astrobiology, Dr. Crick and his associate Dr. Leslie Orgel, in an attempt to answer a question that had been asked him over and over and had been plaguing him since the DNA discovery, wanted to answer this question: where did this DNA come from? Dr. Crick stepped up to the microphone and proposed an amazing idea: that an advanced civilization spread the seeds of life throughout the universe, and that life on Earth was the result of this process called directed panspermia. Pan means across. Sperma means seed. Directed means on purpose. Directed panspermia is a hypothesis about the origin of life on Earth. This hypothesis states that life originated elsewhere in the universe and was spread to Earth by directed panspermia. This hypothesis proposes that basic forms of life seeds were deliberately spread by some advanced civilization in an effort to begin life here where they were planted. Crick and Orgen first proposed their directed panspermia theory at this conference on communication with extraterrestrial intelligence, organized by Dr. Carl Sagan in 1971, and they later published it in 1972. This is the published document here. This theory, which they described as a highly unorthodox proposal and bold speculation, was presented as a plausible scientific hypothesis. Crick and Orgel were careful to point out that directed panspermia was not a certainty, but rather a plausible alternative that ought to be taken seriously. Crick repeatedly addressed the question of the origin of life between 1971 and 1988, and he spent the rest of his life exploring what else? Consciousness. And now here, from the BBC, is a short report on Crick's proposal.
Nobel Prize winner Francis Crick published an extraordinary book called Life Itself, in which he argues from a scientific point of view that life, the DNA molecule, which is the essence of life, could not have got started by accident on this planet. He didn't believe it could. He compared it to, he said it's about as likely that, you know this idea of the primeval soup and molecules accidentally bumping against each other, producing life, which so many of our scientists like?
Sure.
Crick compared that to, thought that was about as likely as the assembly of a fully functioning jumbo jet by a hurricane in a junkyard. It is just such an extraordinarily complicated molecule, the DNA molecule, and its relationship to the proteins equally complicated. So to cut a long story short, he suggested it was sent here by an alien civilization from the other side of the universe, and they sought to preserve the essence of life, and so they sent bacteria out into the universe, into the early Earth. This theory is Crick's theory. It's called directed panspermia. It's its cargo of bacteria spilled out and started reproducing and evolving, and eventually became us. And that's honestly how Francis Crick, the Nobel Prize winner, saw the beginning of life on this planet. Now, if by chance he was right, and we can't dismiss that, the man won a Nobel Prize, after all, for the study of DNA, then we have to consider another possibility, which is that that supposed civilization on the other side of the galaxy that sent DNA to this planet may have genetically engineered that DNA. It's recently been discovered that DNA is a fantastic recording medium. Patents are being taken out all over the world to use DNA as a recording device, that it would be possible to record vast quantities of information on DNA. Right now, today, our scientists can record 100-word songs on DNA, and it's been done on the DNA of the E. coli bacteria. But the evidence suggests that its storage capacity is limitless, perhaps even enough to record the entire knowledge of a civilization. So that's the idea, that maybe on so-called junk DNA, which is 97% of our DNA, only 3% of our DNA is involved in genes. The rest we don't know what it does, and the scientists call it junk DNA. Maybe that contains and has contained since the beginning of evolution recorded messages, interactive recorded information from our makers, waiting for the evolution of a creature that would be able to understand those messages and decode them. And the suggestion is that creature is us, and the decoding method is altered states of consciousness. So this is a parallel possibility.
Well, if that isn't interesting enough, it gets better. The Urantia book, a collection of 196 papers which surfaced in about 1934 and 1935, was put together into the book called the Urantia book and published in 1955, tells us that this is pretty much what happened. Directed panspermia is how our life plasm got to this planet. Then an advanced civilization surveyed our world, and it found our planet capable of life support. At that point, they activated a non-reproducing type of living machine called prokaryotes. Then they registered this planet as number 606 of this cosmic system, an interesting number, and registered the name of this planet as Urantia, which means our heavenly place. And then they left the planet. They left the planet for these prokaryotes, which then served as the terraforming agents, which ate rocks and breathed carbon dioxide and generally prepared our planet for the second phase of reproducing life, called eukaryotes, which they jump-started into life 350 million years later, once our planet had been terraformed and could support the eukaryotes life form. Here's a little bit of information about that. These eukaryotes were, as we're told in paper 58, section 4, were organized and initiated as the original life plasm of this world, our DNA. And they planted them here on our planet in the hospitable waters of the realm, once the salinity of the ocean had reached its appropriate levels, and they planted them in the surrounding supercontinent that today we call Pangaea, just as it began to break up and continental drift began to separate the land masses. In paper 58, section 4, we read, "All planetary life had its origin in our 3 original, identical, and simultaneous marine life implantations. These 3 life implantations have been designated as 1. The Central or Eurasian African, 2. The Eastern or Australasian, and 3. The Western, embracing Greenland and the Americas." And they tell us that they have been guiding and watching over the evolutionary progress of this life plasm ever since. This is in paper 58, section 4. And we'll talk a little more about this in future episodes and in detail in part 2, Guide for the Perplexed. Sometime around the years 1924-1934, we were told by the authors of the Urantia book that we lived in a universe of universes, what today we call heaven and earth. And they told us that we are not alone, that we are all part of a giant cosmic enterprise that is an interdimensional, interlocking reality teeming with multi-levels of life and intelligent beings, extending way beyond any time-space limitations. You are not alone. And they proceeded to fully explain the categories or levels of being across the universe of universe. We know that there's an explanation for all of this. There's something there, here, all around us. Why is there something rather than nothing? The Urantia book gives us a full, complete, and even replete explanation. And this, at the very least, demands an investigation, and hence the reason for this series of investigative episodes. This book tells us that this advanced civilization is now ready to talk to us, just as Dr. Sagan said it might happen one day, but certainly not the way Hollywood would have us believe. Instead, they have sent us a collection of 196 papers, all written by experts in their field. These papers were correlated and placed into a book that was published in 1955 as the Urantia book, a book of essential, revealed facts and knowledge, and sent to us in order to clarify certain aspects of universe organization, administration, and to assist us at this difficult time in our transition from one age to another, from one civilization to a new civilization. They tell us in the Urantia papers that our civilization is now in an emergency situation, and these papers were sent to help us to steer this new civilization to a new destiny. So we invite you to join us in episode 2 as we explore and investigate the Urantia book, and in particular, this emergency. Because if somebody phoned you up and said your name, Bill or Mary, you've got an emergency on your hands, your first question would be, what's the emergency? What are you talking about? If they then said your house is on fire, your next question would probably be, is my family safe? If their response was, no, your family's in danger, your next question would probably be, has somebody called the fire department? So in our next episode, we're going to investigate what the situation is with this emergency, how we got here, what is the present situation, and where are we going? What is it that the Urantia book proposes in the way of solutions? Because it doesn't take much for us to realize that intuitively we know something really big is happening here on our planet. We see it every day. All we need to do is open the window in our living rooms and look out on the street, or open the television window on the world and look at the nightly news. We see all kinds of situations taking place with climate change, epidemics, medical epidemics, pandemics, crime, all kinds of violence and war, and we wonder, where is this leading? What are we to do? So join us next episode as we investigate this situation and explore deeper into the philosophy of the Urantia book. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out at godsgumshoe.org. Give us a like. Post us to your friends. Every little bit helps. Thanks. God Gumshoe out.
25 years and my life is still trying to get up that great big hill of hope. destination. I realized quickly when I knew I should that the world was made up of this brotherhood of man, for whatever that means. Into a crisis, times when I'm lying in bed just to get it all out what's in my head, and I am feeling a little peculiar. And so I wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream from the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I try. Oh my God, do I try? I try all the time in this institution. And I pray. Oh my God, do I pray? I pray every single day for revolution. Into a crisis, times when I'm lying in bed just to get it all out what's in my head, and I am feeling a little peculiar. Into a wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream from the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? "25 years and my life is still trying to get up that great big hill of hope for a destination.